Thank you so much for joining us again today. This is the great webinar with Patrick Moss, and it's the top of the hour. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yeah, hi everyone. Patrick Moss here, senior consultant here at Gold Spring Consultant. Um, I, I've been in the travel industry for a few decades. I won't say exactly how many decades, but my background, I started my corporate career in the car rental space with Alamo Rent-A-Car when they were still headquartered in South Florida. Worked for Wyndham Hotel Group for several years, and all of this was in distribution in that time frame. Then at Wyndham, dived into sales, reporting, travel agent commissions, more distribution. Then I went to work for a TMC called CWT, did implementation, solution architecture, and leading the global implementation team. Then worked for a multinational company to work for the corporate travel department at Honeywell. And then folks at Gold Spring Consulting came to find me and asked me to join the team, and here we are. So welcome everyone. Today we are going to be talking about AI and the impact it can have on your travel management program. So the objective really is how it can enhance your policy, booking tools, reporting, how you can enhance the personal travel experience, the decision making. We're not going to, this is really to open up your eyes about AI and the potential that is there, right? You got to understand the buzzword of AI, artificial intelligence, has been around for a long time. If you think about the history of computing and software, it kind of started around World War II, really, and then it evolved over time and based on conversations back in the day and in sci-fi movies, right? Everybody talked about it. Eventually we're going to get to the artificial intelligence where computers will get to a point where they get smarter than us human beings. And with the release of Chat GPT, Open AI, several years ago, the floodgates opened up, right? So, and now pretty much, especially in the travel space, you see it a lot, but just in general too, with the floodgates opened up, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. There's many different applications. So when we talk about AI, right, most people are familiar with Chat GPT or Gemini, which is an AI developed by Google or Alphabet, I should say. There's Copilot from Microsoft. There's Grok from Accent, but there's many more. There's actually not too long ago I looked at it. There's like a top 25. You have all the known names, but there's at this point hundreds, if not more, of these applications. So it's a bit of the Wild West out there, right? And a lot of companies, even though everybody's talking about AI, whether it's reporting, expense management, or travel, the booking experience itself, a lot of the suppliers are embedding AI, and it's like I said, it's a bit of the Wild West. How it's going to play out in the next couple of years, I think it's going to change dramatically. You're probably going to see 5 years from now or 10 years from now that the total number of AI companies will be drastically reduced, in my opinion, because at some point you need to monetize it, right? Everybody is investing in it, but investors want to get their return on investment. So you're probably going to see a lot of consolidation take place in the coming years. But in the interim, AI is all around us. And when we're talking about the travel space, from a travel management perspective, there's ways that you can already start taking advantage of that to enhance your travel program. So the things we'll talk about today is we'll talk about some of the risk and benefits of AI, then what it can do for your travel policy, your online booking tool, and mobile booking application, how it can improve the travel reporting, enhancing the personalized experience. We'll talk about predictive analytics to make better decisions, etc. And then we'll talk about some case studies and what the future of AI may potentially look like in the travel space. We'll have time at the end for a Q&A, but if there's anything I believe Melissa may have already alluded to, feel free to put something in the chat. We can answer if need be. So without further ado, when we talk AI, it's there's a lot of different descriptions about AI that are part of the overall artificial intelligence world. Some of the things that we will focus from a travel management perspective is the machine learning component, natural language processing, and predictive analytics. There's more. There's descriptive and analytics as well. But what we're talking about here, what is artificial intelligence? What exactly is it, right? I mean, back in the day, like I said, this evolved over time, and the technology kept updating itself and increasing the speed of enhancement of AI. And what OpenAI did when they released the Chat GPT, that is, a few years back, I was indeed one of the people that tried to test it out to see how well it worked. And it was cool to work with it, right? You would type a question in and would come back with an answer. And right early on, there was actually several investigative journalists or journalists with expertise in technology. They immediately started writing articles about the fact about how some of the things that the answers that were coming back were completely wrong. It was, it wasn't what they were looking for in an answer, right? So one of the things about AI is one key component is the machine learning aspect of it. The way you got to look at it, normally in the past, if you have a computer program, you have software that gets coded, the stereotypical zeros and ones, right? You code it in essence, and you type in a question, for example, it would look at the coding to figure out, what is the answer to this. With machine learning, it actually looks at the pattern of data, and based on that makes decision and predictions. So in other words, it starts learning from its own mistakes. There was a famous episode not too long ago. I think it was 60 Minutes, if I'm not mistaken, one of those TV programs here in the US, where a very simple demonstration was done with two small robots, about a foot tall, 30 centimeters, for those non-Americans on the call potentially, that were playing soccer in a small, area. The goal was for them to score against each other. And when they started it, the robots were told to put the ball in the net, but they were very clunky. They kept falling. They weren't kicking the ball accordingly, but it was set up machine learning. And in literally a few minutes, the robot started figuring out, hey, if I move my foot in a certain way, hit that ball, it goes in a certain direction. And rather quickly, within a couple of minutes, they both picked it up quickly and became a lot more accurate. That, in essence, is what machine learning is, right? You take data and you learn from it. So that's what one of the key concepts of AI is. Then there's also the natural language processing. You'll see that a lot in the travel space, right? Where you call up, you call a phone number to a travel management company, for example, and the voice is a computer, and it will ask you certain questions to say one or two, or ask for a representative, etc. Right now, I know when I started at Alamo Rent-A-Car years ago, where they actually were one of the companies that actually rolled out voice recognition, and rather than having to punch in one, two, or three, for example, you could actually tell it to it. It was very clunky. It kind of worked, but over time it has evolved where it can actually has got so much better in the fact that it can understand many different accents, right? And it can. The cool thing too is now it is based on emotion as well. There are certain companies out there that when you're trying to get through to a certain department or representative, it can detect your emotion, that you might be frustrated, and therefore it might actually put you ahead in line, or put you in touch with a live person for that matter, if you're not getting anywhere. So natural language processing is definitely making inroads in the travel space, because when you think about it, right, if you can get what you need from a travel experience online, whether it's a desktop application, mobile application, there are times you may need to contact an agent to further assist you. That's where NLP comes into play to enhance that experience. And then there's the predictive analytics. Again, there's many more other definitions, but these are some of the key elements that are being utilized these days. What we're seeing today in the travel space. From a predictive analytics, it's really looking at a massive amount of data, right? And it's looking at it from a statistical point of view, in combination with machine learning to then analyze that data and based on that make forecasts for future events. So I know in my experience in the past, when you're dealing with a TMC, for example, you're getting your QBR, your quarterly review that takes place between the TMC and the commercial client, for example. And things like KPIs would be presented like, hey, here are the phone stats for the last 3 months. We're seeing this is what happened in the past. But you know, look, if you are a person managing corporate travel for a client, you're looking at this going, well, you're not telling me anything new because you already know that, right? You know what your stats are. I mean, you should. So that's something you look at on a regular basis. So your TMC is not giving you anything new. What you're really interested in is, hey, what is it going to look like 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now? It's kind of like weather forecasting, right? 30 years ago, it was really unpredictable to give a 5-day forecast. 5 days from now would be very tough to accurately forecast the weather. These days, it has gotten a lot better. If you look at the trend percentage accuracy, it's gotten tremendously better. And the reason for that is because AI comes into play there as well. It crunches enormous amount of data to then take that information based on patterns, et cetera, and statistical analysis, it can then much better predict what's going to happen in the near future. So if somebody tells you, hey, look, gosh, 90 days from now, your air ticket volume is going to be up 5%, but it could also be 50%. Well, it doesn't do me any good, right? You really want to narrow it down to that specific percentage, and that you're starting to see that making a lot of progress. So before we dive into the details, I do want to, in the chat, Melissa, you can help me out here what we're seeing in here. But I do want to ask, what are the top 3 scariest robots in movie history? Right? I'd like to see some what everyone is thinking about that. Throw out some names. Oh, I see some people responding already. Let me see if I can see that myself. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, there are Terminators in there. iRobot. Was that a bad one? Hal. All right. Charles, that's a good one there. I see quite a few different names in there. Let's see, give it a few more seconds. Ah, somebody's been reading up on this, it looks like. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I mean, movie history, right? We've, even from when we had silent movies, they were already developing sci-fi movies, right? And there were already scary robots out there. But if you look at it, an interesting note before I share the results here, what it actually is. When I actually developed this presentation last year, I actually, for just out of my own curiosity, I think I started out in ChatGPT. I used Gemini as well as Copilot to see what they would return. Believe it or not, none of them would give me an answer to the question, what are the scariest robots in movie history? They wouldn't tell me. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So I had to do it the old-fashioned way, which is using Google to find out what we came up with. And then a month later, a month or so, a month and a half later, I was tweaking the presentation. I tried it again. They had fixed it because when you use AI, you can actually provide feedback, right? You can say, hey, well, this was a good answer, or no, this was a bad answer. And I had given feedback. I don't know if it was because of me or what's going on here. I'm just purely speculating. But when I asked the question, "What is the scariest robot?" I'm guessing that the answer would have been one of their AI tools. That just my suspicion over there. So I'm sure you don't want to, with that kind of answer, as a company, you don't want to see your company name out there. That hey, the AI you create is the scariest now. But anyway, in movie history, what turns out what the answer is here, yeah, some of them you were right, indeed, HAL 9000, 2001 Space Odyssey. Come on, I know I'm aging myself, but it's one of the best sci-fi movies out there. Terminator, the original, 1984, I'm guessing. Not the ones where Arnold started becoming a good guy. This is when he was the bad one in the original. And then, of course, Ash in Alien. All right, without further ado, let's look at some of the risk in AI. There are certain things before you get started, right? You got to be really careful about from an AI when you start applying it, whether it is through a third party, where you get a booking tool or a specific, like let's say maybe a reshopping tool for your company, for example. um, most will have some form of AI incorporated. And but the I would definitely, when dealing with suppliers, and again, it's going to vary, of course, by client, by the needs, by your pain points that you want to address, what type of tool, what kind of AI you want to apply. But ask questions. On the supplier, don't be careful. I know a lot of companies will look at this from a security perspective. Hey, how is the data when it transfers over? When we give you the P&R, for example, to work with either to provide us with reporting or provide us with reshaping functionality, etc. But also ask questions around privacy, right? Which is important, even with the onset of AI, which has a lot of great benefits. But the bad guys are not sleeping either, right? They're using AI as well. The criminals out there in cyberspace are using the exact same tools available to them to do what they need to do. And so be careful. There's an increase in data breaches over the last few years that that's still ongoing. Bias in algorithm, by the way, it's something that's a lot of times overlooked. But be careful about that because it can lead to discriminatory travel recommendations based on factors like race, gender, or nationality. And also over reliance on technology. I can't emphasize that enough, right? You may use AI, for example, and I'll give you an example that I used years. Oops, oh, my piece fell out. One of my companies I worked for a few years back, we had I was part of the procurement department, and we were getting a contract updated for one of the suppliers, and they gave me a new contract to say, hey, we have the contract. We'd like to extend it by another 3 years. Here it is. I took the old current contract. I loaded it into an AI tool. In that case, it was Microsoft Copilot. And by the way, this is something that everyone should be fully aware of when you do use AI. And you can use it for free, right? With ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, there's many free versions out there if you're using it for business, but also for personal reasons, right? Never, ever, ever divulge anything critical or that is, that could jeopardize your company or your personal data, right? Because once you upload information in there, saying, "Hey, my company does this and this much in revenue, and this how many tickets we did last year." You don't want to tell that in the wide open because now it becomes publicly available. So be very careful about it. Many companies that are incorporating and encouraging employees to use AI do it within their own environment, which is very important. The company I was with, Honeywell, for a while, that's what they did. They had to deal with Microsoft in that case, and they set up the Copilot in such a way that it would only look at information based on the Honeywell data within its own environment. It would not touch the outside. So you weren't inadvertently divulging anything. So I could use it to upload a current contract in that case. And then I would use the new contract that the supplier had sent me, and I would ask Copilot, "Hey, what is the variance between these two contracts? Point them out to me." And then give me put a number in there, put a section in there, the header in there, and show me exactly what the variance is. And then gave it to me, right? Like I had to try to reword it a couple of times, but it gave me a list of like 8 or 9 items that were the variants. So once I had that, I'm like, well, before I can talk to legal about this, the question they're going to ask me is, hey, how's the business feel about it? Are you okay with the new change, or are you not? Give me an explanation, give me the feedback. So I'm like, what the heck? Let me ask Copilot at the same time. Hey, is this beneficial to Honeywell or not? Right. So that's what I did in there, and it gave me back answers for all 8 or 9 whatever items it was. I was all happy about it. I get on the phone with legal a few hours later, and legal is like, wait a second, bullet number 2 and 3, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't appear to be in favor of the company. Why would you even agree to that? And so that's what I mean by over reliance on technology. Be careful when you get back answers because it's not always correct. Again, going back to the machine learning aspect of it, right? Chat GPT, for example, when it first came out and made all the news, Today, it's much, much, much better. It learned, right? That's why companies spend an enormous amount of money accessing data, right? That's why they build these service centers. X did not too long ago, I think in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, they set up an enormous amount of service with the latest computer chips from NVIDIA, if I'm not mistaken, to then crunch data because that's what you need, right? So, but just because you have access to all that data, it's not always necessarily correct. So, regardless, even though it has dramatically improved the quality of the answerings, be careful, even with your suppliers. I would double check what you're getting, right? So, if I'm using like a hotel reshopping tool from a third party supplier, you're getting information back, audit it from time to time, right? Take a close look at it, dive into the details, make sure it is doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? And then, cybersecurity threats are out there. We all know about cybersecurity threats. The same thing with privacy. It has dramatically increased. And last but not least, it does come up, right? Job displacement. There is, I think this was from McKinsey, if I'm not mistaken, the stat where they think 10 years from now, you're looking at a 25 reduction in jobs in the travel space. That may seem scary, but at the same time, right? Keep a couple of things that are often overlooked, and this is my personal opinion, by the way, is the fact that the population level in the United States and many European countries and many Asian countries like Japan, South Korea in particular, right? It's starting to drop. In the U.S., it's leveling off now due to political, with the whole immigration debate, of course. But if you look at the birth rate of the people in the country, it has gotten to the point where it's not only leveling off, it's starting to go down. So 10 years from now, it's feasible that instead of the 340 million people living in the US today, it may be at 335 million or less, right? 10 years from now. Very, I wouldn't be surprised. So, therefore, you have less people at the end of the day that if you want to produce economically as a country, right, you have to increase that for the people that are still left, of course. So, yeah, less jobs. So, it might not be as scary, I guess, is what the point I'm getting at here. But again, it might be concerning. One thing to keep in mind too, in doing research for this, some of the experts out there have already said, right, we're literally only 3 to 5 years away from the first computer becoming sentinel or becoming self-aware. All bets are off at that point, in a sense, right? Because at that point, you're really having a computer system that is going to be like a human brain in essence, and even better, right? Even faster in decision making process. Can be a great use. Can also, yeah, we have to put guidelines or guardrails around it, right, to make sure it doesn't go off the rails and we don't go back to that HAL 9000 or Terminator incident. So yeah, if as long as we as an industry, those creating AI, follow do the right thing, and hopefully governments and organizations will monitor and regulate them accordingly. We should be okay. So, having said that, I think we're getting to a poll here. Melissa's going to help activate this online because I'm interested to hear, which areas of the corporate travel space do you believe will gain the most of AI integration in the next few years? So your options are itinerary and booking automation, expense and invoicing management, risk and safety monitoring, data analytics, cost optimization, and travel experience support. Feel free to vote. We'll give it a little bit of time when they come in. Melissa, keep me up to date when when it starts slowing down. But by all means, select which one you think will have the biggest gain from using AI in the travel space. All right, look at that. All right, oh wow, we're a little bit all over the place, right? But data analytics and cost neck on neck. It looks like with itinerary and booking automation makes sense. Expense and invoicing, we see that a lot, and of course the all important travel experience. It's evenly split. Uh, I guess my slide about risk didn't resonate because we're having very low there, but that's fine. Just kidding. All right, thank you all for participating. Much appreciated. Let's carry on here. So, with all the warnings, let's talk about some of the good things and what AI can do, of course, right? That's what we're here to hear about. What can we do with AI in the travel space and travel management? So there's definitely great elements of AI that can be put to use in the travel space. Key benefits, in particular, are enhancing the customer experience. Right? I think most of you are familiar with certain chatbots, virtual assistants. Right? It's becoming more and more prevalent in the industry, and we're only going to see more of that in the space. Efficiency of operations. AI is all about efficiency. So I know look, I don't know what everyone's experience is, but when it first rolled out, one of the things that I did, I applied it to something that's very simple as my Outlook. Right, I would go on vacation for a few days. You come back and there's a few hundred emails, right, unread. If you did the right thing, right, if you disconnected after, which you should if you go on vacation, but you would have 100 or 200 or if not more emails, depending on how long you were to go on vacation. And you would, literally, I remember my boss telling me, that the first day you're back, just block the entire day so you can get caught up on emails, which, not very efficient, right? So instead, the nice thing about AI is for those of you that are using Outlook slash Copilot, or you can do it in Gmail as well with Gemini. You could actually have your AI activate to say, hey, listen, give me when you come back from vacation, give me the emails that need action from my part, and then separate them out from the emails that are either junk or that are just FYI. And you can actually have it sorted for you and file it accordingly. And usually for those, when you're back from vacation, from my personal experience, you get maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 or so emails that really truly need follow up from you, you need to follow up on. And the rest, file it, right? And literally within 10, 15 minutes, I'm done, right? And I can move on. So that's a very simple way of personally how you can take AI to help you from an efficiency perspective. The corporations, obviously, and the travel space can do it at a larger scale, of course. Excuse me. There's the cost savings aspect, of course. Again, right, like I mentioned, right now it's a bit the wild west out there with so many applications out there, and it will sort itself out in the coming years. But at the end of the day, you want to monetize it as well. It's going to cost you. I mean, a personal license these days is somewhere around $20 a day, $20 per month to utilize it, which to me is worth it because I use it quite a bit, as some of my colleagues can attest to that. But for a company to get an enterprise license, is it worthwhile, right? And depending on what you're buying from a supplier perspective to manage your travel, right? Obviously, you want to have return on investment on that. Then there's the data-driven insight. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. Let me look at the time here where we are. But that is definitely a huge benefactor of using AI. And then there's the risk management aspect of it to help navigate your company, your travelers through this ever-changing world and the geopolitical and et cetera challenges that are out there. So let's take a look at some of the examples what can you do with AI and enhancing your travel policy? Well, there's the data-driven policy optimization. There are some companies out there that are already using this to look at their expense and some of the compliance components of it, where they're seeing certain trends where there are an area of expense. There's too many violations in there, and so they've taken AI to look at that to figure out, hey, why are we seeing these violations in this particular corner of expense? Is there a trend out there? Is there something that we need to adjust in the policy? And that's where AI can help out with. Most large companies will have a travel policy that consists of 50 to 75 pages roughly. And I know me myself as a traveler working for these companies, I'm not reading all 75 pages, right? But it is necessary, right, to regulate to make sure people adhere to the policy. But there may be times where you may need to tweak it. It's one thing to get an Excel spreadsheet with all your data, looking at your expense, looking at your credit card, looking at your travel. But how efficient is it just using Excel without AI to figure out, hey, are there any issues that can be traced back to a policy that we may need to tweak because it's causing issues? It's very hard to do, but with AI, you could dive deeper into it. Then there's the predictive budgeting and forecasting. This helps you to be to mitigate the unexpected cost, right? And that might help you to tweak your travel policy as well. Where the classic example, right, of hey, my my budget for meals, for example, is X amount of dollar, but if I'm going to New York City, $50 barely gets me a coffee, right? I mean, there's some are expensive markets. Maybe you need to tweak it. Things change, inflationary, different countries, different markets. It can be a challenge keeping up with that. So, from a budgeting and forecasting perspective, this is where AI can come into play, and that can help you then update your policy. It's actually surprising that usually commercial clients don't update their travel policy all that often. Once it's developed and approved, it usually stays there for years to come without people actually taking a close look at it, like, hey, maybe we ought to update it. This is where AI can come into play, right? You can look at the data, crunch it, and see, hey, do we need to make any adjustments? There's also from a predictive, budgeting and forecasting. I talked a little bit about it earlier when explaining about predictive analytics, but you could, when you get your QBRs, you get your KPIs, I should say, it doesn't do me any good unless you give me, well, hey, what's the future going to look like? I remember years ago, a couple of years ago even, one of the TMCs I dealt with, hey, 90 days from now, your tickets are, anywhere from 5 to 45% up, right? And it's like, wait a second, that's not very detailed, right? And it has gotten better. You see a lot of the tools that are out there, they're getting much better, where it says, hey, 6, 7%, you're looking at an increase or a downward trend for that matter. 90 days from now, that is more precise. And you're probably seeing the error ratio of only a few points versus double-digit points, right? So it's making it a lot better. There's also the personalized travel policies. I from my own experience, I got asked, why are we still seeing a high rate of 14-day advance policy violations pop up in this reporting. I dove deeper into it. It took me a while. Didn't use AI, but if I had that back in the day, that the tool, it would have been able to quickly identify a section of the company where it was very project related. They were required to last minute, last day, with a 1 day notice to get on a plane and go to a client to fix something, right? So obviously that's needed. Those are your customers. That's what the business does. And the 14-day advance goes out the window in that case, right? So it was skewing the numbers. We shouldn't hold that particular department responsible for it, or we tweak it for them. So for them, it would not be a violation in that case. So that's where it can help it, because it took me a while to many iterations of pivot tables to figure out, hey, what the heck what's going on here? So those are some examples of how you can put AI to work with travel policies. Now, from an OB and mobile booking experience perspective, what can AI do there for you? For those of you that have been following the various publications, there was an article, I think it was last week actually. So right off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was again, but they talked about the fact that potentially in the near future, not that far away, the desktop online booking tool might actually go away, right? We were AI advancements may get to the point where I'm talking to an AI, which you can, you can do that with various applications. Say, hey, ask a question. You can have a conversation with it. It's getting to the point where it's getting scary, by the way, but you can get to the point where you can have it book your itinerary in a lot of detail. Now, travel online and mobile booking has come a long way in the last couple of decades, for sure. There's huge improvements made. But even today, right, you go in any tool, whether it's Neo, MyCWT, Concur, doesn't matter. You put in point A to point B request, you're getting a list of possibilities to choose from, and then based on your company policy, based on your preference, loyalty programs, etc., you select that particular trip. Now, with AI advancement coming down, coming on stronger, the thinking is down the road that why look at 20 options? Just give me the best option based on my personal preference and hence my personal experience, right? So that's where that personalized travel recommendation. There's companies out there, and you see in here, I won't read them all out, but there's companies like Navan Travelport that are doing some really cool things with personalizing your data. Now, again, with AI, as with anything, like I mentioned earlier, it needs a lot of data. So if I made a trip in the last 3 years only once, yeah, it's not going to know much about my preferences, so to speak, right? But if I've traveled 50 times in the last 3 years, it will see a pattern. It will detect what airlines, where I like to see, what hotel I like, where what kind of hotel room, etc., and what kind of maybe restaurants I like to visit, and that can recommend. So you're seeing that enhancement in, in the OBT world and mobile booking. And the chatbots and virtual assistants are doing some cool stuff these days. Gencia, Amadeus is doing some great things. From predictive analytics and price forecasting, Hopper is a really cool tool out there. That's one of the things too, right? Today, I know we have air and hotel shopping tools out there, but some of these tools, hey, I need to book a trip today. It's Monday. It can tell you, hey, don't book it yet. Wait till Wednesday. Based on analytics, and there's a chance the price will go down by 3, 4, 5%. You may save a few dollars, right? And there's plenty of seats available, blah blah blah, etc. So those are some of the things that can come into play from a booking experience. There's the real-time travel disruption, where I think most of you are familiar with that, right? So an event happens, you immediately get notified, and the flight gets canceled, it rebooks you automatically. It's not perfect, right? I mean, I got to be honest with you. It happened many times, especially if you're on a segment. From my own personal experience, I do travel to New England a lot. I mean, the Charlotte area, as you can see by the background over here, and we fly from Charlotte to Portland, Maine, for example. Well, during certain times of the year, there's only one flight a day, right? And if that flight gets canceled, in this case, it's American Airlines. They're like, well, we can rebook you on a flight 4 days from now. Well, that's not going to help me if I need to be there tomorrow, right? So it'd be much better off to say, hey, go from Charlotte to Chicago and then Chicago to Portland, for example. Do that. So the airlines haven't quite figured that one out yet, but it's getting better. And there's the automated expense management. I can't tell you how frustrating it's been in the past to collect all your receipts, staple them all together. I think I still have them in my folder from the old CWT days. I need to clean that out. But it's frustrating to do that, right? And we're getting to the point you have tools like Expensify, for example, that doing some really cool things these days, where a lot of times receipts may not even be needed, right? You follow the policy as long as it's within the policy. So, and you put something on your corporate card, and it's during lunchtime, and it's at a merchant that sells food, right? It can automatically categorize it as lunch. It is a merchant that might be connected to accordingly. So it automatically uploads the details of the receipt. That is, you don't need a paper receipt, not needed anymore. You come back from your trip and it's already filled out. Your expense report is done in essence. You just need to validate it. You're okay with it, click submit. It doesn't even need to go to your manager for approval anymore, because if it falls within a budget, if it falls within a policy, why would you need to send it to a manager for rubber stamping, right? So those are some of the things that can enhance the overall experience. Again, the thinking is it's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. Be interested to see how good AI can quickly, do away with it. Because at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit there for a half hour, 45 minutes booking travel. I don't. So based on my historical data, you can get to the point where you have an AI tool that says, hey, you're going from point A to point B. Here's the flight. But I used to live in New Jersey, for example, and every time I had to go on a business trip, I got the first flight out 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. It didn't matter. I want to get out on that first flight because it's Newark. For those of you familiar with that area, and especially in the wintertime, you don't want to take a flight at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a high chance your flight is either delayed or canceled because of weather situations. But you get out the first thing, you're close to 100% guaranteed you're getting out. So, with historical data, with that preference attached to it, it could automatically do that for you. Get the right airline, get the right seating, get the hotel, the whole itinerary, and just have one option because it knows that's the best option from a personalized experience perspective, and therefore it makes it so much easier to book. But that, yeah, it's coming. So, and I got to pick it up a little bit because we're running only 20 minutes left. But from it can also from a reporting perspective, what are some of the key elements, right? Reporting when we at Gold Spring Consulting talk to clients from a travel assessment perspective, the reporting and data quality is always on the top of the list when it comes to data of pain points for a client. It's the accuracy, the data quality itself, right, is still a huge problem. AI can definitely assist, and there are some cool tools out there that will help consolidate the data. I remember from my own experience at the previous company that I worked at, you would get a credit card fee from one company, you would get the expense from a different supplier, and travel was with a different supplier, TMC, right? So you had three data feeds in essence, but they didn't talk to each other, right? For the life of me, I couldn't figure out. You couldn't match them up. There was no key identifier that would combine the three, right? It was extremely challenging from an audit perspective, et cetera. It was a headache. Um, AI can assist with that, right? It can put the travel with the expense with the credit card, and it makes it better from an expense management and from a data quality perspective. And the predictive analytics, here's that word again, that buzzword, right? To help optimize your budget and negotiate better rates. Because one of the things one of my functions back a few years back was hotel sourcing, for example. We actually contracted with about 800 plus hotels worldwide. And a year later, you go back to that list, and half of them, barely booked anything. There was actually probably a few dozen hotels where you had no room nights. So why waste our time, right? Better data, better forecasting would help with that. One of the things I started working on, it never finalized because I went to work for Goldspring. But one of the things I was looking at is taking a look at the division that manages all the various projects for the company worldwide, because those are usually 3-month projects, 6-month projects, what have you. But if I have that, then I can see what's coming in the near future. Then I can better uh, uh, get a hotel in a particular area that I would have never thought of. That, hey, I know there's a project team going in there, so therefore let me negotiate a hotel based on policies, etc. Find the best one, have AI assist with that. Hey, solicit these 2, 3, not 20 of them, for example. And it makes the hotel sourcing component a lot more efficient. If anyone wants to invest, I have some ideas in hotel sourcing to make that automated. But anyway, there's also the real-time data visualization and interactive dashboards. That's becoming more popular, right? Again, I mentioned it earlier, looking at old data, yeah, all nice and dandy. I really want to see what's going on now, right? The cool thing is there's some great companies out there are doing some really cool things with it, where you open up your dashboard and you see a live ticker, so to speak, right? How many airline tickets are being booked, and hotel nights, and car rental days, etc. And that gives you better instant insight and what's going on with your travel program, and you can customize it, and it's interactive, right? So you can take action right away. It helps speed up things. And automatic compliance and reporting that ties into that, right? You can do real-time monitoring with that and immediately take action if need be, if there's something taking place. So, yeah, from an AI perspective, it's about the data. And I just to let you know, right? I played a lot with it when it first came out, the AI with the data that at the company that I was working for. I started playing with it, and I found out right away that if you uploaded 1 month worth of travel data, that wasn't going to do anything. You really need several years worth of data. Hence, again, the example I mentioned earlier about these companies, these tech companies that are investing an enormous amount of money in as getting their hands on as much data as possible and crunching it. Because the more data you have, the better your forecasting, the better your insight will be, right? So anyway, a lot of great things you can do with it. Next up, personalizing your travel experience. We touched upon it briefly, right? But I mentioned earlier my example when I used to live in New Jersey, flying out of Newark. It was one of the things that I had to do it manually, but like I said, the possibility is there to take that historical data, right, and build better algorithms that will then allow you to have better customized travel itineraries. Now, it's not just about the air, the hotel. I remember going on several trips to Asia back in the day for when I used to work for CWT, and I would have to be in Singapore for a meeting on Monday, but I would get there on a Saturday because that way I would have the Sunday to rest or to get used to the time zone, etc. And it would have been very helpful back if we had AI because it could have built a custom itinerary from me to say, hey, these are some of the things you could actually do there, right? So those are some of the things, and that helps the overall personal experience as you as a traveler getting less frustrated. Why the heck did you put me on this flight or in this hotel? And which speaking of, by the way, I'm still a little bit mystified, to be honest, as to why we don't have better hotel rating data. I know there's the TripAdvisor. I know, Concur has the rating for hotels, etc. But I'm talking about employees, giving feedback to based on a stay they've had, right? I remember one company I worked for, we actually did that. And I'm actually surprised that many other companies are doing that because that would have been very helpful when I was in a role at Honeywell, because you get the complaints after the fact about a particular hotel. Hey, why we have this hotel in the program? Because it's horrible. It's not clean. They were not friendly. It was not a good location, right? So if we had access to the data, I could use AI in that sense, right? The thinking is like, hey, get these, any negative review, remove them from the program, and then look at also data from a positive side. Definitely put them in there, right? And so therefore, the more people I can guide towards a particular hotel or hotels, it would help drive up the numbers and therefore put me in a better position to negotiate my rate. So, and that goes back to the personalization of the traveler experience. And again, at the end of the day, this allows for minimal disruption to you as a traveler at that point, make the traveler happier, the employee happier, and ultimately it be better for the company itself. So ultimately, at the end of the day, right, what can automation and travel management? We talked about what can it do. Well, it's all about the smart travel planning, right? The automated expense, the assistance, predictive analytics. We talked about dynamic pricing. You hear that a lot, right? End-to-end travel management. Using one AI tool that can put your entire trip together. You don't have to worry about it. The benefit, it enhances the efficiency, right? Cost savings that come into play. Uh, it's all nice. Everybody gets a lost savings report, for air, hotel, etc. Uh, but it's what you do with it, right? And the lack thereof. We see that a lot with commercial clients where they're not really doing anything with it. All right, we lost X amount of dollar with this because we didn't book in advance or we booked out of policy. But what is it that you're doing with that data, right? And so it can help with the improvement of compliance and the 24/7 support. We talked about the fact that the impact on employment might be there. And again, this goes kind of back to the example of back in the old days when, the first cars were becoming more cost effective thanks to Henry Ford and the assembly line. So the masses could afford it. And of course, the horse and carriage went away, right? It's the classic example. Here's new technology. Yes, there's a segment of the population that will lose their job, the blacksmiths, right? But they in turn can be reskilled, retrained to go work in a car manufacturing plant. You're seeing the same thing with AI, right? Yeah, it may impact administrative roles, customer support, data analysis, right? But it opens up other opportunities with the technology. That's how you're going to look at it as well. All right. Time for everyone to chime in. What are the best robots in movie history? We heard about the bad ones, the HAL 9000. Put it in the chat, please. Terminator, and what was the other one again that we had in there? Oh yeah, Ash from Alien. Yeah, but now let's think about the good robots that are in movie history. Type them in there. Let's see what do we got. Does anyone? R2D2, RoboCop. Oh, C3PO. Oh, we have some Star Wars fans in here. Baymax. Which one's Baymax again? Oh, yeah, okay, I know which one it is. Oh, C3PO is really, yeah, popular. Cool. All right. Thank you all for your input. I'm playing along here. This one, by the way, when I tested it out months ago, I told you the funny thing that the AI wouldn't report back on bad robots. Now they do, but at least on the good robots they did. And the result for that, there we go. Hopefully, here we are. The result, Wally. Nobody guessed Wally. Come on, the best robot out there, cleaning up the environment. And he was romantic too, I believe, in that movie. R2D2 and RoboCop. Somebody did mention RoboCop. So those were the good robots out there. So from a case study perspective, I know we're coming to the end over here. So quickly, there was a company, and they had many pain points. They were challenged by leadership to enhance the corporate travel program after too many complaints. And they're like, wait a second, we're a technology company. Why aren't we using our own technology to enhance this? So that's what they did. They adopted their own technology to better to make their data better, use the data. They had enormous amount of data on travel for years to use that from an algorithm perspective to from a predictive analytics perspective to do better expense forecasting, real-time budget tracking. The personalization of travel became a lot better, and it enhanced ultimately their compliance and their risk management. And they put the AI to work to and special natural language processing (NLP) to improve the booking process for their employees. It has significantly reduced costs for them. It improved efficiency and productivity and enhanced traveler satisfaction. So it was a brilliant way of them putting their own technology to use in the travel space and using it to their benefit. So what's the future holding in travel? Well, we talked about personalization, but we're gonna go into hyperdrive in the coming years, making suggestions for upgrades, amenities, and services to really enhance that personal experience. Seamless integration is going to be a huge part. I mentioned that example earlier of the different data sets that frustrated the living hell out of me when I was working at this company, where the three didn't match the credit, expense, and travel. That will, with AI, can assist with it, putting it all together, right? So you're gonna see a lot more of that unified AI system that will connect everything. The voice and gesture-based interaction I mentioned briefly, right? It will take into account emotion. Yeah, how is your voice coming over, right? Even with different accents, different foreign accents, etc., including mine, by the way. You may have guessed where I'm from. Originally, I'm from the Netherlands, but it does a lot better job at using that language to assist you with that. There's AI-driven sustainability initiatives. Sustainability has been a part of travel. It hasn't quite, been monetized accordingly, but that's where AI can step in and help drive them for selecting the appropriate routes, etc. And from a policy perspective. And then there's the other buzzword, blockchain, that we've been hearing a lot about. It's not just about crypto, but it's also can be utilized to enhance security and the actual travel process. You can actually use it to bounce back and forth between different suppliers, but stay connected in a way. Company like Kayak is doing a really cool job with that. So all nice and dandy, Pat. Appreciate it to give us some ideas. But what do I do, right? If I want to incorporate it, well, our suggestion would be to assess your current travel program, identify those pain points, gather feedback, not just from your own department, but from your travelers, right? The people who are using it, the EAs, the executive admins, right? And set objectives. You may not want to tackle everything all at once. Maybe there's an element that, hey, let's take a look at this particular element that's been bothering us that we'd like to see enhanced and improved. Maybe let's focus on that and put AI to work. Look at different suppliers potentially that could potentially work on that and try it out. Have a pilot to see if that can be useful and if it does give us a return on investment. No point in spending X amount of dollars if it's not going to save you more in what you're paying for, of course. make it efficient, and put it to work. And then the key thing is, it's all nice and anyway, you have a new tool, but make sure people are using it. Train your employees and encourage adoption is key, of course. If your employees are not using it, what's the point, right? Make it exciting. And there's a lot of great simple benefits that your employees could do with AI to make their day-to-day life better. I used the example of Outlook earlier, but there's many, many different ways of, and like the contract, for example, there's many different things you can do with that. So, what else is there coming soon? This is a little bit of a personal experience, UAM, urban air mobility. It's those flying cars, so to speak, right? This is all electric, no pilots. It's kind of like your robo taxi that you're seeing in San Francisco, Phoenix, I believe. I think in a couple of months, X will come out with their own robo taxi in Austin, Texas, that they're going to be experimenting with. But these are the ones that fly, right? So think about it, the implication that potentially this may have. I know here in the Charlotte area, I-77 is a nightmare. Should the county, should the state spend billions of dollars expanding that highway if this were to come to fruition in 5 to 10 years from now? And if people are willing to adapt to it, and if companies are willing to allow their their employees to use it, right? Because if you do, then why spend the money on enhancing highways when these things start flying all over the place? By the way, I learned a new word, vertiports. I never heard about it. That would be the place where they take off and land from. So if you were to incorporate that, keep in mind, right, from a safety protocol, insurance, liability, right, route planning, etc., it'd be an interesting thing. So I'll leave you with that cool little thing that come in the future. We're at the end. Are there any questions that are out there? Melissa, I don't know if there was anything in chat.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. There was one we had. Very good info. Are there any AI platforms that are closed system that would allow doing contract comparison example you gave?
Yeah, I mean they sort of all do. From my personal experience, right? We used Microsoft Copilot. We were actually beta testing. This was a couple of years ago. So we had an enterprise license, and they set up a beta enterprise solution. So, like I said, it would only take data from within the company's environment. So, but there's others. I know Alphabet does a great job, of Gemini, in that. Those are the two that I'm familiar with. But there's definitely, and again, right? I can't emphasize it enough. It's cool to play with these tools, but please don't put your banking information or any sensitive company information in there, because right away it'll become public knowledge. But yes, you would have to deal directly with those companies to set up you need to have an enterprise license, but it definitely can be done. All right. Well, I think, Melissa, if there's nothing else, or if anyone else, if there's no other questions, I do appreciate it. It's just, again, this is just an introduction to what AI, what the possibilities are. We will post this. Feel free to reach out to me, Patrick Moss at goldspringconsulting.com, if you have any other questions. But thank you all very much. I appreciate it.